Bye, Carol. See you tomorrow.
Yes, I do. But I wanted you to know that this is the deal, is that this is here, except then we can invite somebody from the public to sit here. It does. You got it. Oh,
no, that's not what I do.
yes. This is what you're going to say.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Did you finish it?
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right.
Now,
Taylor.
absolutely.
That could change.
So I think we're going to do at the end of the work week. I'm going to welcome all of you to what we're calling Peace in the Park. Peace in and peace out. We believe that peaceful means always begins with ourselves. I welcome you as a mother, a daughter, a partner, a worker, a citizen of the world. I want to welcome you to the Commons, a place where historically our ancestors spoke out about the problems of the day. All kinds of people came to a place just like this to convey their concerns as well as to celebrate their achievements. Today we observe the 10th anniversary of the U.S. intervention in Afghanistan. The CSRA Peace Alliance is a group of volunteers who strive to communicate the principles of peace through education and dialogue, and we welcome you to this opportunity to share with us. Over the years, we, along with many other groups, have worked to garner support for the creation of a Department of Peace. Senator Kucinich continues to support this effort. We already have an Institute of Peace, which lacks the funding and influence that a fully funded Department of Peace would possess. I urge you to sign petitions online in this regard to really make that happen. Also, the continued proliferation and stockpiling of nuclear weapons puts all Americans and our neighbors in danger. We have the power to be able to know when testing is going on of nuclear weapons. We possess this kind of technology, and all we have to do now is press our senators to push our Congress to pass the legislation to ratify an agreement that we've already signed but failed to ratify. There's been a lot of talk about, even in this town, the use of public space and how you use it and who controls it. And I understand and I empathize, sympathize with the authorities in regards of taking care of this space. And so they know that we are going to take care of this space. And I consider that while we're here, this is really a rather sacred space because it has to do with what we mean and what we're sharing here. I came upon 2 pledges for nonviolence, and I wanted to share one of them with 2 points. Deepak Chopra mentioned just the other day, and I thought it was just wonderful. He says, place your hand on your heart and think of what type of world you want to live in. And I think, taking a moment to consider that, there's a lot of thoughts that flood into my mind about what I would like this world to look like. Martin Luther King Jr. had a pledge of nonviolence that included, remember, the nonviolent movement seeks justice and reconciliation, not victory. Sacrifice personal wishes that all might be free. Refrain from violence of fist, tongue, and heart. And I wanted to just share that with you. So thank you for being here.
Around thinking this is an interesting spot to make a noise, cause a ruckus. We've got Oglethorpe over there. We've got SunTrust, big Southern corporation. We got Mark Twain over here, who apparently passed about 100 years ago, if that's correct. And the quote there's a painful irony to that on today and with us meeting here today on our. I don't know if you've noticed this. It's the Procter & Gamble soapbox here. So a lot to take in. I think it's on these days that we can maybe just think and appreciate all the irony that's around. But anyway, I did have a little here, and I'll tell you more about me later. First, I want to thank you all for coming. We know there are more like us who are remembering this anniversary in their own way, on their own, whether it's remembering a fallen friend, family member, or the loss of even a childhood or a youth. I know that 10 years ago I had no idea. I had no thought. I'm thinking college is in my future, not protesting against a war that's gone on so long and has become historic because of that. So we may have diverse beliefs as to why this should be remembered and different reasons to call for peace and the end to conflict, but we're here and we're making that call together, and that's what democracy looks like. That's what peaceful protest sounds like, because we know, as so many before us, that war breeds war, but peace brings peace. So please continue to fill this place with hope for our country's standing in the world and at home. Continue to fill it with thoughts and prayers for the safety of those in harm's way still. Please fill it with healing for the wounds we have created and worsened by foolish war making. And leave here with that spirit to inform others, to make others think, and most importantly, to bring that spirit to the voting booth so that our leaders can learn from the people what we want in this world. And I empathize with the conversation that was going on over here about the seeming worthlessness of voting as many, especially my generation, can feel, the defeatism of the act. But really, we have one time a year to send a message, to bring a voice, to rid ourselves of divided government. If we don't take that opportunity, then we're stuck with it. And so, I would just encourage everyone to get young people, yourselves, your family members, out to share that voice at least that one time a year, because we have the rest of the year to keep hearing the bad news. We can at least try to make ourselves heard in voting booths. So I'll be introducing a couple more speakers throughout the evening, and just full disclosure about myself, I'm president of the Young Democrats of West Richmond County and co-host of the local access Comcast program Points of Interest. I was in 7th grade during 9/11 and on that morning, and again I can say that without doubt 10 years ago I had no idea that I would be speaking today to memorialize the anniversary of a war that's gone on for too long, for too little gain, and evidently much more destruction than we had anticipated.
Remembering tonight the many times that I protested. I'm from New York during the Vietnam era, and a weeknight during the late 60s, there would be hundreds of people who would come out for a peace vigil, protest, whatever. I'm so glad that you're here tonight. I think what we talk about tonight, what we share, we need to carry with us. Whether we wear something that says peace or whether we express in words, somehow carry this message to all the hundreds and thousands of people who are not here. After 10 years, this is a forgettable war. People go about their business and don't even think about it. Or if they do, oh yeah, it's over there. It really burns in my heart that it's such a forgettable war. I lived in Iran in the late 60s and early 70s. And some of you have heard my story, but I'll go through it quickly. I came back during the Iranian Revolution, went about my life and did other things, never expected to have anything to do with all that again. Then 9/11 came along, and I had two opportunities to go to Afghanistan with women's delegations, to meet with Afghan women and to talk with them, find out what their stories were, what were their hopes, what did they see for their future. And I do speak Farsi, so I could talk directly to them most of the time. They speak, they speak a lot of different languages, but those who speak Dari, I could kind of understand them, and they could kind of understand me, and we did as well as we could. Then after that, I went 4 times to Iran on peace delegations, and so I'd like to talk about all those experiences today. In Afghanistan in 2003, the country was still recovering from what was it then, 25 years of war. They had been at war since 1979. And if you can imagine somebody at that time, 25 years old or less, they had never known a time that there was not war. The women we talked to had just experiences that would just be inconceivable, of seeing family members killed in front of them. We went to see sections of the city, as driving through the city of Kabul. During the Civil War, there were whole areas of the city that different ethnic groups, would live in different neighborhoods as common. And whole neighborhoods had been destroyed, so all that was left were just the crumbling pieces of buildings. And sometimes people were still living there. They had no other place to live, so they would still be living there. There was so much hope at that time, that now the Americans have come, you're going to help us rebuild, we're going to have a good future, we're going to have peace.
Was that the war with Russia?
Yes, 79 was Russia. The Russians left in 1988, 89. And after that became civil war. Iranians are extremely sensitive to any kind of talk about foreign intervention. They have a deep sense of history, and they remember that they were the Persian Empire. They have a great deal of pride about that glorious past. But they remember very well 1952, when the CIA orchestrated the fall of the Mossadegh government and reinstated the Shah. And that story is all written up in a very good book called All the Shah's Men, if you'd like to read it. It's all public knowledge that the CIA did it. So the Iranians are very sensitive to that, and they say, we do want change, but we want to work it out for ourselves. So rhetoric by any foreign government, whether it's a U.S. official or whoever else that talks about regime change, is very counterproductive, because any outside threat is going to more likely unite the Iranians around their own government. As much as they don't like them, they're going to not achieve a good result. Also, the sanctions, I think most peace groups are not in favor of sanctions because they don't work. Very, very rarely have sanctions, I think, for South Africa and maybe, I don't know, 1 or 2 other cases, but it mostly affects the poorest people and doesn't stop whatever government policies are in place.
From before the war was started after 9/11, and this was from a rally in New York where there were like 250,000 people. The media reported 10,000.
Isn't that typical?
And I am so thrilled right now, so thankful about the demonstrations that are happening. I think we're at a pivotal moment when it can no longer be glossed over with newspeak and sound bites and a bought and paid for media and a bought and paid for government. I think that we're at a moment when there's a lot of hope, and I'm really happy, thrilled, and thank you so much.
I
served 8 years in the Army, and I was during the Vietnam era, but thankfully I didn't go to Vietnam. I was at the 101st during the Egypt-Israeli war, and we were on alert, came this close to going to Egypt. Thank God I didn't do that. My son was in the Air Force, and he served 120 days in Kuwait with a special ops group. So that's my perspective. So I have capital in the game, and especially when my son was over there, you know, I had several encounters with folks who I deem flag wavers. You know, this lady was I was in Sam's or somewhere, and she was going on about the war and what have you. And I said, well, ma'am, do you have anybody over there? And she said, well, no. I said, well, you need to shut up then, because my son is over there, and I have stakes in this. We have, as somebody mentioned, we have human capital being wasted over there. I share your pain about the complexity of the issue, but again, I wouldn't want my son over there until these folks got their act together. We have to pull out at some point. We have enough problems in this country we need to work out, and the whole thing got astray when we went to Afghanistan to get the folks who attacked us, who actually attacked us. We took a left turn, went into Iraq, wasted a bunch of time and human capital there. Now we're back over there running rock to rock trying to chase folks. So I think we just need to stop and pull back. And, you know, from being around the military, and there's something called a Powell Doctrine, named for General Colin Powell. He said whenever there's an issue, we need to have a clear reason for going in somewhere. We need to go in with overwhelming power, and we need to have an exit strategy. At this point, we have none. Everybody's standing around, and the president, bless his heart, you know, he doesn't want to appear weak or whatever. So in terms of coming out, we still have flag wavers and chicken hawks who want us over there. We got to stay over there. I haven't heard a good reason why, but before other folks' sons and daughters get killed over there, I would say bring them back. That's my perspective.
During the period 1967 to 1972. Most of us aren't aware that from 1962 to 1971, the United States military sprayed herbicide over much of Vietnam to strip the thick jungle canopy that was concealing our opposition forces. It was also used to destroy crops our enemy forces may be depending on. It was also used to clear the grass, the brush from around the perimeter of all of our U.S. base camps and outlying fire support bases. Because of continuing uncertainty about the long-term health effect of the sprayed herbicide on Vietnam veterans, Congress passed the Agent Orange Act in 1991. This legislation directed the Secretary of Veterans Affairs to obtain a comprehensive evaluation of scientific and medical information regarding the health effects of exposure to Agent Orange, and other herbicides used in Vietnam. Veterans and Agent Orange Update 2010 is the 7th congressionally mandated update to integrate the new biomedical evidence into the findings of the first comprehensive report published in 1994. Great strides have been made over the last several years in understanding the health effects of exposure to the herbicide used in Vietnam. But there's still many lingering questions. More work needs to be undertaken to resolve questions regarding health outcomes. Most importantly, COPD, tonsil cancer, melanoma, brain cancer, Alzheimer's disease, and paternally transmitted effects to offsprings. But most important to this country needs to stop using chemicals that impact today's environment, whether it impacts today's soldiers or our own food, our own air, and our own drinking water. Thank you.
Actually fueling this conflict. We provide one of the parties with $3 billion a year in military aid, more than almost any other country. So in 10 years' time, that's going to be $30 billion. Mind you, this is in our economic climate today when we're so desperately in need of money here. We're spending all that money. So How is this money used? Well, the Israelis will tell you that's used for their self-defense, but there's an underlying truth that's not being stated, that it's also being used to build settlements in the Palestinian territories, in the West Bank, and in East Jerusalem. And from being there twice, traveling between Israel and the Palestinian territories, I can tell you it is very apartheid-like, the system that's there, with the Israeli military protecting the settlers and moving in settlers and taking over land, and the native population living under military rule. The settlers live under Israeli civilian law, the Palestinian population lives under martial law.
And the goal of the philosopher. I have been revered by every civilization, adored by the wise and feared by the wicked. I present the way of truth, the pure mind, the clear heart. My scales weigh the validity of contending claims. My sword cuts through deceit and decay, and I judge without fear or favor. The ancient Egyptians knew me as Mot, the goddess of truth and balance, the right order of the universe, and they sought to reflect my virtues in their lives and in their lands. In my halls they cried out, I have not caused pain, I have not made to weep, I have not made hungry, I have not killed. In Babylon, Hammurabi created a legal code to bring about the rule of righteousness so that the strong should not oppress the weak. And he inscribed his laws upon clay and stone for all to know the procedures that govern their lives. I have been exalted in all the words, in all the books of divine right and holy wisdom. I am in the Vedas, the Torah, the Dhammapadma, the Bible, the Quran, the Adi Granth, in some which have been forgotten, others destroyed, and some yet to be written. In Africa, I guided the councils of the tribe, and in America, I witnessed the gathering of the 500 nations. The Greeks knew me as Themis, heavenly law and order, and Pericles called on me to establish democracy in Athens. And yet, in too many times and too many places, I have been ignored, denied, and even distorted. History is a bitter cycle of struggle and subjugation. Hierarchies of race, class, gender have set peoples against each other. And in every empire, the might of the few has kept the multitude in misery. How much havoc has been wrought for the sake of gold and glory? How many grand monuments have been built on forced labor? How many advocates of freedom have owned slaves? I inspire the courage to challenge tyranny. Spartacus marshaled the slaves against the might of Rome. In medieval England, Wat Tyler's revolt helped to free the serfs. And in the last few centuries, more and more of my champions have come forth as people realize that liberty and justice for all means all colors and all creeds. Simón Bolívar liberated much of South America from Spain. In Jamaica, Granny Nanny's revolt forced Britain to end slavery. And in North America, the suffragists and abolitionists rallied to open mind and change custom. And after long and arduous struggles, African Americans, women, and Native Americans received the right of citizenship. And still, prejudice abounds and poverty is rampant. War has ravaged the world for millennia. From clubs and spears to bombs and torpedoes, humans have created ever more potent tools of destruction. And yet, it has brought nothing but sorrow and ruin. My sword is the blade of discernment. Why do you call me blind? I see all the nations of the world squandering resources on weapons while people starve, clinging to ancient hatreds and choosing vengeance over solution. Will you help me to end this cycle of rage and repercussion? The greatest epiphany of the modern age is nonviolence. It is not a new concept. The Jain religion of India prescribed the practice of ahimsa. Ahimsa, the attainment of universal peace by refusing to harm any living being. These principles were embodied in the work of Mohandas Gandhi, who insisted an eye for an eye makes the whole world blind. The pacifist Christians believe that violence contradicts the teachings of Jesus. And Martin Luther King shows peaceful resistance in his marches and protests, declaring that justice denied anywhere diminishes justice everywhere. And now I say to you that you are meant to share the bounty of the earth and not battle over it. Stop the hating and start the healing. Mine is the path of dialogue and negotiation. Come before my scales. Weigh your lives. What is the truth within your heart? The ancient Egyptians weighed their heart against the feather of Mot. And I say, look into your heart. Are your thoughts based on reason or bias? Are your actions the expression of love or the repression of fear? Let all stand in equality before me, male and female, of every origin and background and orientation. It is time to learn that difference is not dangerous and the unknown is not unworthy. Embrace peace. I offer the blessings of harmony. Every man and every woman is a star. Embrace peace and let all be free to shine.